Good evening. My name's Connie Boyer. I'm your mayor. And tonight, I just want to give the date so there's a reference point. It is April 25th of 2022. And today I have our police chief with us, Mr. Dave Thomas. And I also have Gordon Shckelford with us. And Gordon is on our Animal Control Review Board. And he's a dog owner and I believe a cat owner. And he spends a lot of time on the trails. And we're going to talk about a variety of subjects, anywhere from being a responsible owner to what's in our code, to the challenges we face as a city with enforcement, and how you can help and what you can do if you have an issue. So again, we're going to weave in and out of some of these topics, and I'm going to let Gordon start. And so go ahead, Gordon.
Just by way of introduction, I've got a brief statement that I'll paraphrase. We're really lucky in Fairfield to have the pathways and trails that we do, the parks. And I've been walking dogs in Fairfield since 1993. I'm on my second golden retriever. And since I retired, I walk about 50 miles a week. So I'm out all the time and I see a lot of dogs and a lot of instances and a lot of people. And I got interested in this because in the 90s and 2000s, I never bumped into any dogs where there was a hassle or confrontation or danger or I felt like I wasn't safe. And then when Monica and I moved back from Florida in 2016 and we got another dog in 2017, and walking the puppy and walking it around, it became apparent that there were a lot of loose dogs in Fairfield running around the streets. And on Labor Day 2019, I was walking Max down 2nd Street toward our home and we were attacked from behind by a vicious dog that grabbed Max's hindquarter, threw her to the ground and grabbed her by the throat and was trying to kill her. And I attacked the dog physically, but I didn't have anything but my running shoes as weapons. And we had quite a bit of a fight to get her unhooked. And the only reason Max survived was because she had a thick GPS collar on and the dog's teeth were locked into her collar and couldn't actually get to her flesh. So she survived physically. And I got very interested in the safety issues around the trails because it's one thing to be a big, strong guy, but I see a lot of little old ladies and their little white dogs on the trails, and I worry about their safety. So since that time, Max and I have been attacked about 5 or 6 times by other dogs, and I've been carrying pepper spray around as a defensive weapon, and I really recommend the use of pepper spray for self-defense for anybody because it breaks contact very quickly. It burns their eyes, it's not lethal, it doesn't really hurt them, but it breaks their attention on the attack. And I've had luck with that 3 times now, of not having any trouble, no bloodshed, no trouble, and they just run away and come back for another day. So our purpose today is to discuss safety measures to keep people safe and their dogs safe both. And I just want to emphasize what a problem the whole thing with dog safety is. Last year, 4.5 million dog attacks occurred in the United States. 800,000 of those ended up in hospitalizations. 50 people died from dog attacks last year, and insurance claims in the amount of $850,000 were paid out because of all this bad activity. So it's a real danger, it's a real threat, and I want to help our group and the public of Fairfield discover ways to make it safer where people can feel confident out walking their dogs, because it's such a wonderful place to go out and walk, and you should feel safe and secure in your hometown walking your dog.
Great. Thanks for giving some of those national statistics. And what we're hearing locally, and maybe some of you recognize this name, Will Steingraber. He's a trainer, a dog trainer. And Will also has noticed that, we do have an uptick and dogs running loose, and almost every day. So we really, first of all, want to stress of being a responsible dog owner and keeping control of the dog. Now, I know that dogs sometimes are pretty smart. In fact, yesterday I was out in the country, and where we were at, there was a neighbor that has a pit bull, and they tell me it's a nice dog, but he's very menacing, and he did jump on me one time, and he's so strong, it's amazing. So it's a little bit frightening because he was off the leash, and I don't know if it's a nice dog or not. And one thing that Gordon and I have talked about too is that many times your dog by themselves, that's a nice dog, particularly to your family, and you don't think it's a threat, but if it gets loose and then connects with other dogs, that's an issue because they have that pack mentality. And I think, Gordon, you can talk about that a little bit more than I can, and how their behavior changes.
Well, the pack is a huge inducement for them to behave poorly. And about half the fatal occurrences take place in a home that has the dogs resident in the home, or they're friends of somebody, and it's more than one dog in the attack. So they're much more dangerous. And the whole thing about pit bulls is, by nature, they were bred to fight when they were first created as a breed, but in terms of their friendliness and all that, their numbers are quite good. And the trouble is that pit bulls become dangerous when they're trained to be dangerous, trained as guard dogs to protect, to be antagonistic. That is training that is forced on the dog. The trouble is 70% of dog attacks are from dogs who have been trained to be violent. So it's the owner's responsibility, if they're going to have a weapon or weaponize their dog, is to control it and keep it out off the streets. And I think that's one of the challenges we have as a group to figure out how to implement that.
Yeah. And I think, too, I've heard this several times, that in neighborhoods where a dog is running loose and we hear, oh, well, that neighbor lets it out, thinking the dog's going to stay within the yard, and then it doesn't. It's all over the neighborhood. So that's an issue. I want to point out that a lot of the several people that are on the Animal Control Review Board, I mean, Gordon, I don't know if you're open to this, but I've had other people say, listen, I'm very willing to go to neighbors and try to problem solve this issue. So if that's an issue in your neighborhood, call me or call Dave, let one of us know, or the city administrator, and we can try to, if that's your issue that you want to help get resolved in your neighborhood, let's try to get one of these people to help that are very good with talking through that with the neighbors. And I think we could have some help in that area.
I'm completely happy to do that.
Okay, great. I will say, Gordon had attack, why don't you explain when you were on the trail not too long ago, last fall, and then what we did after that?
All right, I was walking Max and had just gone through Chautauqua Park, and we're on the back side, and 3 dogs ran across Highway 34 and started circling us. And I immediately got my pepper spray out because they were circling us, and I felt like a pioneer in a wagon with the Indians riding around. And then the leader of the pack broke off and made an attack at Max's hindquarters. And just as the dog hit Max's hindquarters, I sprayed it in the eyes and broke the attack. So they ran away, and then I knew where that had come from because I saw him come across the highway. And then I went home, called Connie, and we went and visited the lady that owned the 3 dogs. And she admitted she just couldn't control the one dog. So we talked to her for a long time, and she was really going to make an effort to control the dog. But then she got a hold of me a couple days later, and she said the dog's wild and uncontrollable, and she actually had it put down, which I was very sad that she had to lose her pet. And she was sad that she had to lose her pet, but she thought it was a responsible thing to do and was worried about the dog doing real harm. And I think that is really being a responsible pet owner at that point.
Yeah, and ultimately, we don't want to have to see people do that, but also she realized, again, what you said, that it was in the best interest for her family and for the public to put the dog down. And in that case, you were also walking near someone, a younger mother that had a small dog and a child in a stroller, and had Gordon not been there, could have been a much worse situation. So, and these are the things that we are trying to avoid. Now, if the dog is attacking like that, and Dave, if you got a call at the police station, you would try to respond. But can you talk about the dynamics also of the trail versus city?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do. The only thing the police department doesn't respond to like it used to, and this happened several years ago, there was a long discussion. We stopped responding to loose dogs that aren't acting aggressive or dangerous or attacking. Obviously, if a dog is biting or attacking, we are going to respond because it's a public safety issue. We deal with dogs a lot. Sometimes people are upset when they call and they're out on the trail and there's nothing we can do. We just have to remind them every once in a while that a lot of the trail is in the county, so the city ordinances don't apply. The police department can't go out there and enforce our loose dog if it's out in the county, or the sheriff's office would have to come in, and they can only respond under state law, and it has to be a vicious animal that they'll deal with, usually by capturing or destroying it. So. There are some misconceptions about what can be enforced in the county on the trail that we try to educate. Yeah. Did I answer your question clearly?
Well, and you gave some background. I did want to mention we do have people here in City Hall, and they might have a question or comment at some point, and that's fine. And if you're watching live stream, that's fine. You can type in a question, and Jason will let us know if we have a question on the live feed. So I was thinking about something that you just said that I was going to go to next. Oh, well, let's talk about. Since we've kind of gone the subject of a vicious dog and/or when a dog bites and you're notified, and let's also talk about if a dog kills one of your chickens or your rabbits or whatever in the backyard, what's their process? So, and what they should do. So let's talk about that first.
Would you like to have Tim tell his story?
Sure, Tim. You have a story, correct?
Once upon a time.
And you want to talk loud so
sure.
they can
hear? Do you
hear?
want me to get up at this thing? Is that helpful?
It's not helpful, but if you just talk loud, the mic will pick you up.
Just recently, a few weeks ago, I had three chickens in my backyard. One day, I discovered that one of the chickens had been killed by a husky who was running around the neighborhood. Interestingly, I had never seen this dog before. I assumed it was from some other part of the town, and it just, huskies can move fast, and generally do. But I found out later that it actually is just around the corner from me, like a block away. I think that I got that right. I don't actually know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure another neighbor who lives across the street from them said, oh, they live there, right there, and so on. So, the husky, I saw the husky running around after he killed the chicken, and, running up and down the street, and I went after him, not, just sort of curious, like what to do next. I, meanwhile, called the 919, or 911, and, dog, came up to the dog. They were super friendly, just being a dog, and it's like he was not vicious, but to a chicken, it's like it's going to go one way, and you can pretty much count on it. So I don't have dogs now, but I grew up with dogs, and I I'll actually tell a related story that, or at least relates to this issue. I grew up, I had a black lab among other dogs, and, the sweetest dog you could ever meet in the world, except on some occasions where they were around a small girl child. No idea why. We had the dog since, small puppy. There's no sort of weird historical background of this, but he would randomly snap at little girls. And I'm just saying that because that kind of thing can happen with the very nicest dog you could ever imagine. And that dog also, if he came across a nest of rabbits, they were eaten pretty quick. So, dogs will be dogs, and I had no, I didn't have any feelings of animosity towards the dog, nor did he towards me. And, I just was down one chicken, and then the next week, the same thing happened again, and the second chicken was gone. Now I have one chicken, which seems to have survived, the last few weeks. So I don't know what changed, except that I put it out on Facebook, and eventually somebody was directed to the thread, and it was supposedly the uncle of the owner of the dog, and they said, "Oh yeah, so sorry, and what can we do?" And initially I was in shock, and I didn't have any animosity towards the dog. It was just like, the dog's just doing what the dog does, and what could I do? And then when the second one went a week later, it was just like, okay, this is a bit much. And they had offered to sort of compensate me in some way. And I threw a number out, saying, hey, maybe this does make sense at this point. And, because I'm going to probably get some more chicks now and have to wait a year before they start laying eggs and all that kind of thing. So anyway, so I think the other thing I wanted to mention is, especially with dogs like Huskies, particularly, wonderful dogs, super friendly and loyal, and in my experience, they need miles of land to run in. If you're going to coop a dog like that up in a small space, it's not going to work. I had a close friend who owned a Husky for a while, and twice they jumped through a plate glass window, right through it, to get out and get to her. She showed up at her work, looking for her, wanting attention. That's all she wanted. But Huskies are capable of that, with the best of intentions, the big, Husky hearts they have. So I think that it's really worth people being aware that certain kinds of dogs, it's just not fair to them or anyone else to try to coop them up in a small space.
Yeah, good point.
Well,
You have to understand what kind of dog you have and what they need for exercise.
Just the punchline of that story was that she gave the dog away, and she advertised it and found a new home for them on a farm out in the country, an hour away.
Yeah.
And they're
there's a
much
couple
better
legal
off.
points here
Yep.
that we need to make. According to the ordinances, if a dog does that twice, it becomes a vicious dog, whether it's friendly or not, because it's killed 2 chickens. So at that point, the police should be involved completely. And I don't think people understand that. And I think one of the problems here is people don't understand the laws in the books. So we've got summaries of the dog ordinances that we can share, and you can make it available to people to get on a website and
Yeah.
download them.
Yep, it's out on the city's website, all the code, and so they can go there. But given this situation, Dave, wouldn't you want to know even on the first chicken incident? I mean, the reality is, from what I know, is that once the dog kills a chicken, a rabbit, whatever, it'll be back. When I was in high school, my brother had a Husky. Exact same thing happened. And she got out. She was so big she could push open the sliding glass door, and unless it was locked. She did that twice, went after, rabbits that were a couple blocks away or a block away, I don't remember. At that time, the police would go out and they had a dart gun. She was killed, actually. And we were all sad about it because she was our dog and she was a nice dog. But, she did the wrong thing and she went back again. It didn't happen just once, it happened twice. So again, that's my understanding of dog behavior. You're right, they're kind of just being dog behaviors. But once they know where that place is, they're probably going to go back potentially. So on that first time, shouldn't that be reported to the police department so you start tracking?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I'll try to oversimplify the city codes. We have two basic definitions. The first is a dangerous animal and mostly dangerous dog. And that's several dogs. You can't just say pit bulls. They named numerous types from German Shepherds to Belgian Malinois to all those Rottweilers and any dog that's over 100 pounds. And it basically says that if you're going to have it in the city, you can, but you're going to play by all the rules. And the rules are it has to be in a secure container. You can't leave it. You guys are talking about the dog left out on a tether or a chain. You're not supposed to do that. It's against the city ordinance. They have to be in a secure kennel type enclosure or inside if they're not watching them. They can be loose in the yard if they're supervising. But that's all dangerous animals in the city. Once this dog becomes aggressive, it then qualifies under the definition of a vicious animal. And correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've been a real cop, Gordon. There are 3 instances that can get to a vicious animal. It can attack a person, and that means such as biting a person, obviously, but even scratching a person. I think the second section is to aggressively run towards a person. Or the third section is, I believe it has to attack some type of wildlife twice in a 12-month period.
Yeah, domestic animal or fowl.
Okay.
Twice, on separate occasions within 24 months.
Thank you much. I thought it was a year, so it's 2 years, so that even gives us more time. But once we get those reports that they're investigating, we can show that's the same dog that's attacked. We've done it several times where we've notified, and the police department does this, we notify them that the dog is to be removed. I believe it's within 30 days. And the investigating officer then goes and checks and makes sure it has been removed. There also is an appeal process. If they feel that it's not a vicious animal, they can appeal to the Animal Review Board. So there is law enforcement always likes appeal processes to courts or boards. So we always tell citizens, we've deemed this, but you have a right to go in front of the board or even take it to court. So there is a process, but those are the 2 types of dog ordinance. Dangerous is any dog that's big and can hurt people. It's not necessarily a mean dog, but it can be. And like these 2 have said, when I was a canine handler, the trainer always said, your dog is safe when he's or she is with you. I had a female, so because she's with the pack. I'm the pack leader. She's relaxed. She's a pretty laid back dog. Once she's away from me or away from the family, that's when they get nervous. And to protect what they think is the pack or the pack territory, they will go after people walking or wildlife or a chicken. So that's why we try to remind people like you folks, if you're going to be an animal owner, be a responsible one. And we still, just because we're not picking up loose dogs, we still enforce all the ordinances. That's the only one we're not doing. But if there's a dog that's habitually loose, Mr. Morrissey, our city attorney, we cite him into court all the time, and he prosecutes them. If there's barking problems and the citizens have had enough and they want to give us a written statement, we charge them with allowing a dog to bark in the city limits. And Mr. Morrissey loves doing all those prosecutions. We keep him quite busy. But quite frankly, most of the time, and I don't blame them, people call upset about barking dogs. They say nothing is being done. We say we understand. we need just a real quick statement from you, and we have you show up in court because courts have said over and over that a police officer's peace can't be disturbed. It has to be a citizen. So we just need you to come show up to court, and if it goes to court, and say my peace was disturbed or this dog was barking, and most times they don't want to do that. I don't blame them. It's a headache to leave work to go to court, but a lot of times when people complain, at least to me as the police chief, that nothing is being done about this, it's because they don't want to press charges, and once you explain that to them, what it takes to get somebody cited and testify in court, they understand at least the process a little more.
One of the challenges, and I just want to mention also, is that, I mean, there are times when I have called about a loose dog. The police have come out, but by the time they get there, the dog is gone. So that's also an issue. And again, right now we're short-staffed, so that becomes an issue. But let's talk about if a dog does bite a person, you know, and again, that's reported to you. It's also reported to Dan Miller, the county health, what's his title? County health.
Guru.
I'm blank. You know,
He's with
officer.
public health, I do know
Yes,
that.
yes, he's with public health, and he deals with a lot of different things. Environmental officer, thank you. I couldn't think of the name that I wanted. But at any rate, Dan also, it's reported to him as well after it gets to the police department. So he will make contact with the owner of the dog and the victim. And he said sometimes it's both. And he will go through that process with both of those and tracking and making sure the dog has rabies shots. And if not, what to do. The dog will have to be confined. And he told me something new today. And he said, which I thought was kind of interesting. So he said there are two kinds of rabies. There's the vicious rabies, which I think most people are familiar with, where the dog becomes, you know, aggressive and wants to bite at everything, foams at the mouth. That's what we think of when we think of rabies. He said there's also something called dumb rabies, where the animal becomes lethargic and non-responsive. So that is more, you know, definitely more rare. But the other thing he mentioned was when the animal's confined, they try also, especially if it's going to be put down, they try not to injure the brain, because that's what they test when they send that to the state lab. There's no cost to do that, but that's where they do the testing to find out for sure whether the animal is rabid or not. So,
Well, rabies is incurable.
right.
And
Absolutely.
the biggest carrier of rabies in the United States are dogs. And we haven't had a death in Iowa since 1979, but other places have more deaths. And raccoons and bats can carry rabies, but rabies is nothing to mess around with.
Right, because you're right. There is basically, once you have it, it's, you know, and for the animals, there's no cure. They're going to die. So that's kind of that process that happens there. Can you talk a little bit about registration of dogs?
Yes, sure. Yeah. And that, just to go back to your rabies, that's state law that we assist with when the officer, and even if you go to the emergency room and for a dog bite and you haven't called the police, state law requires the staff to contact us and have an officer investigate, and it's because of rabies. We will go find the dog's owner if at all possible, so the person that got bit doesn't have to go through the rabies shot. And that's the two questions we're going to ask is, you got to show the officer proof of vaccination. Sometimes they don't have it, but we give them a couple days to contact their vet and get us the information. If not, then we require them to quarantine the dog for 2 weeks, I believe it is, and then the officer goes back and makes sure it isn't showing any signs of rabies. So it's something we work closely with Dan Miller. We're always faxing them every time we have a dog bite. So, and we will talk real quick about registrations. We do have a city registration. When it first came out, everybody was compliant. Like with most ordinances, we start to get lax. The complaint is, what am I getting out of that registration fee? And I understand, you know, it's tough to justify that. Sometimes people just do it because it's an ordinance, but there are some benefits if your dog is found running at large and it has a city tag. When you fill out that sheet at City Hall, I actually come over here once a week to get those copies along with all the other paperwork. It's entered into our system so we can quickly pull up, and the officer will make one attempt or a couple attempts if possible to have you instead of the dog going to the vet clinic. And it's real expensive to pay the fees if your dog is taking the vet clinic. So it gives you an opportunity to pay a little bit up front as opposed to getting hefty fines if your dog is taken to the vet clinic. There also, I think, isn't there less of a fee if the dogs are neutered or spayed?
Yes.
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 You want to talk about the amnesty?
One thing that Gordon and I have talked about is a possible amnesty program. It looks like we've got a question here. Just a sec, Jason. And so that's something we're going to talk about in Safety Committee that we can address to see if we think that will help. That we give a certain period of time where you come in and register dogs and it doesn't cost anything.
The idea is growing our own responsible dog owners.
Absolutely.
We want every dog owner to be a very responsible dog owner, and registering their dog is part of that. And if we can work out some kind of amnesty to promote that, I think it helps everybody in terms of identification and just being a good neighbor.
Yeah. And there is a fine. The police can write a fine to you if your dog is running around loose. So, Jason, did we have a question over live feed? What's the question?
All right, so can the city or county put up signs at all the trailheads reminding people that they are required to keep their dogs on leashes?
So the question is, can a city or county put on trailheads that the dogs must be kept on leashes?
They're already there.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure there are some signs. I'm not sure where they're at. We can certainly probably always do more. I don't know.
I know
you're
for
probably on the
sure
trail more than I am, so.
In the Lamson Woods, Witham Woods, Jefferson County Park. So the other extensions of the trail, I can't guarantee, like by the hospital, for instance.
Right.
And on the other side of Witham Woods, I'm not sure. Or on B Street. But I think even on B Street, there's a sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is there, it's not that the signs are the big deal. The big deal is people don't obey the rules. They let their dogs run around loose. And there was a big brouhaha with people with me this weekend about a particular lady who runs around with her two little white dogs and lets them loose. And I've encountered her with Max a lot. In fact, so much that Max doesn't pay any attention to the little dogs as they yip at her. But I've asked her, you need to leash your dogs. And another thing that happens, people ride bicycles with their dogs running loose. That's also a dangerous situation with a bike traveling fast and a dog traveling fast. And we just need to agree as a community that we're going to all obey the leash laws and get along about it.
Yeah. I do know of a plumber here, I think it was last summer, riding a bike, and this was in town, and he got bit. He showed me his wound on his leg up here, on his upper leg, and it looked really nasty. He could barely walk for a couple days. That's how bad it was. So again, that's to your benefit. And we're trying to protect you as a dog owner, because I don't know that he came back and sued, but hopefully that dog owner responsible at least to pay for the doctor bill, et cetera. But there could have been a significant lawsuit there that, is going to cost that dog owner. So that's why we're really talking about this we want people to be responsible dog owners.
And one of the problems here is people don't know how to react when they get into a situation like this. I mean, they don't know when they should call the police or when they should call us. So I think as we go, we can refine that and make it more super fluid and make it easier and more effective, which is the goal.
Yeah. Yep. And then hopefully at some point we can, we'll see, but hopefully at some point we can have a little bit better enforcement when I get our police staff up to full staffed and have a better process.
Unfortunately, we are, don't quote me on the numbers, 5 short right now. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's a 15-person department, that's a third. And we're trying to catch up now. And it's going to take us a while to catch up. And when you're short-staffed.
Seriously short-staffed.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And so, again, that's why we have to help each other. And if everybody responsible for their dog owners to keep them, and I know sometimes you want your dog to run loose, right? They want to have them freedom. Take them down to the dog park. That's there so you can let your dog out and run free. So let's use that resource that we have.
So I think an important point here would be some dog owners are blatantly irresponsible. And when people ask them to do the right thing, they refuse, or after their dog's bitten one of these people's dogs, they ask them to do something about it, and they kind of get pushed off. So what would be the best option for that person who's been rebuffed after asking the person to try to do the right thing?
Do you have a suggestion? Well, how would you answer that, Dave?
We
besides
get that
pepper
complaint a
spray.
lot. Yes, pepper spray is effective. With dogs, we use it quite a bit too, but it's something we deal with a lot. We're always happy when neighbors try to be neighbors and try to get it worked out. This is Iowa. We're supposed to help each other out and take care of each other. And that happens a lot of the time. But if that isn't working, if it continues to be a problem, we strongly recommend you call us. We're still, we just don't pick up loose dogs now. We'll still talk to the neighbors. We do it all the time with noise complaints or, listen, the neighbor said your dog keeps coming over. He tried to come to you about it. It's not helping. Now the police are here and there's a police car in front of your house, and it's usually the next step, and it's the same step for us. We take several steps. People, the first couple times you come over and our computer shows every time we've been to a house, as long as we have that name in there. So a lot of times officers, I did it myself. I've told you twice. I've given you a verbal warning both times about your barking dog. This time it's not working, so now you're going to get a citation, and that's going to get real expensive real quick. I don't know what it is now, John, but it's about $200, maybe $150 a time, that quickly. But most people are very decent and willing to work with neighbors and say, you're right, my dog's being a knucklehead. Some people, it takes law enforcement getting involved. We don't mind doing that. We do it all day long, every day, especially day shift, where people can't be nice to their fellow neighbors, so we get involved. But sometimes it's that trip to court, and we hate to say it, but I've even got to the point where I've written a couple tickets. That isn't working. They started getting arrested, and a trip to jail is usually a quick, they're not there very long, but usually a couple hours in jail. Yeah, I need to, but those are very dangerous cases of people knowing they have dangerous animals and they don't care and they let them continue to run. So there is definitely progressive enforcement, and a lot of times people say, well, I want them cited the first time. We don't like to do that necessarily every time, but think of it as when you get stopped for speeding, it's probably not the most serious thing in the world that officer's dealing with, and if they feel they can give a verbal warning, they're going to give you a verbal warning to hopefully correct that. And it's the same type of crime, it's the same level of crime, it's a simple misdemeanor. So we give verbal warnings a lot of times on the side of the road when you forget to throw on your seatbelt or you're speeding a little fast, and you're happy for those verbal warnings, but we also try to do the same with dog owners, hopefully. And most of the time they are responsible and say, yep, I'm embarrassed the police are here and you'll never be back, and we never come back.
So I feel like John wants to say something. I don't know if John is mic'd. Is he? Can we get him mic'd?
Yeah, but he's not on camera.
Yeah, that's all right. So John, you're not on camera,
That's
but
not
just go ahead and
fatal.
talk.
It's probably good for the public. One of the things I wanted to say is, in the bite cases, we have varying degrees of how they're viewed. Sometimes the owner is very remorseful. Sometimes the owner is wanting to do everything possible. We have probably the most balanced animal ordinance, I believe, in the state. It gives Animal Control Review Board quite a bit of discretion. Sometimes people go in and will ask the board to accept an explanation, such as provocation or some circumstance where the dog was protecting its owner or protecting property from being stolen or something like that. We've got 2 or 3 things like that that are excuses that the Board of Review can accept. The Board of Review can also say, you've got a dog that it seems to be an awful nice dog, but you need to do something, and there's about 10 things in our licensing ordinance that people can try out, including psychoanalysis of the dog, and it just it makes me think some people that have been in front of the Animal Control Review Board will try about anything to hang on to the dog because people love their dogs. The other end of the spectrum is sometimes the way you get the attention of the owner that just doesn't really care what you say to them. And you've had a bite, or that's not the way my dog would have behaved. You must have provoked it, or something like that. Is the magistrate that hears your dog case or fines the person that got the citation. They're probably upset about the citation if that's their attitude, and they may only get maybe $100 fine out of it. But the magistrate will tell the victim, for the next 30 days, if you check in with the city, you can make a claim for restitution. And if you hand somebody a notice that they can come back in front of the magistrate and explain why they shouldn't be responsible for $2,300 at the Jefferson County Health Center for the sutures and the treatment and the attention that goes along sometimes with a nasty bite, that's the attention getter that owner isn't getting when he's having his conversation and sticking up for his animal and pretending the animal didn't do anything very drastic. But we had 8 months basically of hearings on our animal control ordinance, including input from 3 different counties, humane societies and animal shelters, and the state humane society. We actually had a person in town from the national society before we put everything into the ordinance that we have. And there were as many pros as cons being weighed when we did that. And this thing about restitution it's a lot more painful to some animal owners than anything else you could do short of putting their dog down. So it's out there, gets overlooked a lot of the time. Some people, they don't really want to turn it into a case. Then there's other people, I know in this county we've had a $75,000, not through my office, but a $75,000 personal injury dog bite case down at Libertyville, which was just a situation where the owner didn't pay attention again and again. And at that point it gets stuck back on the owner through their homeowner's insurance, and they're not popular cases to explain what happened to a jury. So, I'm not advocating that that's where this should go either, but restitution is always available on the citations in magistrate court, whether they paid a $50 fine, which is the lowest, or $750 fine, which is the other end of the spectrum. That restitution is going to get their attention if somebody did get hurt. So that's what I wanted to say.
Great, thanks, John, appreciate that. So, yes, there's a question in the audience.
Well, this is actually more of a comment. If we take our dog to the vet, they never mention that the dog needs to be registered in town. So I would suggest that we contact all the veterinarian offices in the area and maybe have a handout or something when a new dog is brought in, so that they are aware of that.
Great idea.
The next thing is that we take our dog to the dog park probably 4 or 5 times a week. We see a lot of dog owners there. A lot of them want to train their dogs. They want their dogs to stop barking. They want their dogs to stop jumping up and things like that. They just don't know how to do it. We have a neighbor who is dying to get her dog to stop barking, but she doesn't know how to do it. So I would suggest somebody like Will, who's really wonderful, we've worked with him before, that maybe there's some way we can put together in the summertime some obedience classes that would be sponsored by the city, and people pay whatever makes sense, but we have the dog park for that. You could do obedience classes there very easily.
Great idea. Did that come through, Jason, or you want me to repeat that?
No, that's fine.
Okay, it came through. Thank you. Thank you for those ideas. I've written some notes. And I guess I just wanted to reiterate that because of the last question and going to Dave, is that if we got a situation that the dog is threatening, and it's a situation where you need to call the police, please call the police. If it's a neighbor situation, you can certainly, I think, call the police, let them know. I'm certainly okay if somebody calls, sends me an email, and if we need to get somebody to kind of negotiate a neighbor dispute about an animal, let's try to do that.
I'm happy to help with that.
Gordon's happy to do that. I think there's a couple other people on the Animal Review Board that are happy to do that. And we haven't talked much about cats, but I want to say that I have had complaints about cats as well. And this generally is related to the number of cats somebody has. And so, again, to be respectful of your neighbors, nobody appreciates the neighbor's cats coming into your garden or your flower bed and taking care of their business, and then you have to go dig around in it. And so again, try to keep the cats in your own yard, and be respectful to your neighbors, because they do like to wander. And so I don't know. I think we kind of covered pretty much all of our questions. Can you think of anything that we didn't really touch on quite enough?
No, I think we touched on basically everything.
Yeah.
I think we need to have some follow-through, and I think there's enough of the system here that if we work it right, we can make it work with what we have. I think that really should be our immediate goal. So anything that I can do to help with the neighborhood situations or people's questions about the trail or advice about this or that, I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Yeah, and Tim.
Quick point, in response to Patrick's comment, mentioned about a handout that the veterinarians could have ready, maybe a more comprehensive handout that would include all these things that we've talked about that may seem relevant to such a thing, could be just put down in one place and given to whomever when they come in, and maybe have something similar to that posted possibly on these different Facebook pages, as well as any other website where it may seem effective.
Mm-hmm.
I do want you folks to know we try to limit what we ask our veterinarians to do, because they donate so much to the city. Not only with, a lot of times an officer will be faced with a situation where there's a dangerous animal in a home and it doesn't qualify under the city, or it's not running loose, but the family said this dog's going to kill me. It's happened. It's going to kill one of the family members. We're not supposed to seize a dog, but the officers, because of the safety and the request of the family, will take it to the vet clinic. Well, the city is supposed to pay all those bills for storage, and it gets, as you can imagine, that what people don't understand is once the dog gets to the vet clinic, it's exposing its diseases, so they have to vaccinate it for several things, or every dog that you take to your vet clinic is going to get those diseases. So they spend a lot of money. They used to charge, it's fair, the city is seizing the dog, it should come to the city. But a lot of times they will write those bills off because it is taxpayers' money. And even Neuter is, and they've done this for probably 20 to 30 years, the police canine is completely free. There's not too many communities that are willing to do that. We have a lot of donated money. I offered when I was a canine handler, I'll pay these bills, and they said absolutely not. This dog is, protecting our community, and I would chuckle. They would always say, "Well, this is the cheaper medicine." Oh, that's right, we're donating. So they'd give me the more expensive for Geno when I had the dog. And even when my dog retired and was too old to work, I went to him and said, "Okay, the city is now given me this dog, so now I'm the owner of the dog. She's completely retired, so it's my dog. I need to put her on with the other bills." I had a couple other dogs that were at the vet clinic, and they said, "Absolutely not. The dog's still free. Until she dies, we're going to pay for everything because she served our community." So I just want you guys to know up front, we try to not ask our vet clinic to do much more. It's probably something we need to do a better job of getting out just on our website, the police department's website, and the city of Fairfield's website. That you're right, there isn't a lot of user friendly. Hey, you got to register your dog every year at this time. We can check into, but I just wanted you guys to know up front that
We could probably develop some type of pamphlet, though, that's there and available, for people to pick
definitely.
up. I think that's worth
Veterinarians.
considering. Yeah,
Or even a poster on the wall,
yeah,
and that could be even at the dog park,
good point.
right?
Uh-huh,
And if we had maybe animal safety, dog safety event on the square for one day, for 2 hours or something, bring your dogs, and there could be some vendors there with food and other stuff that would be good for the dogs. You could then make people aware, we do have a registration required. We got the forms up here.
okay. Yeah, that may be something we could do at Art Walk,
No, I
actually,
think
this
we
summer.
can keep our attention on it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
develop a good database.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. The other thing I wanted to mention is, in the city budget, we do spend about $7,000 every year that goes to Noah's Ark to help the spay and neuter program. And they also get grants for that as well. So I think you mentioned earlier that a lot of the dog bites are related to dogs that have not been spayed and neutered. Is that correct?
Yeah, in some places of the country, the deaths that have occurred have been 100% of intact animals, male and female. So if you're not breeding a dog, there's no sense to leave it intact. In fact, it's much, much safer to get them spayed or neutered.
Yeah. So, good point.
One
Good
of the
point.
other
Yep.
things to mention is your shelters exist so you don't have to put dogs down. That putting a dog down is one of the alternatives under the sanctions that are in the enforcement against vicious animals, or even animals that aren't vicious, that are just dangerous, but made it through the Animal Review Board. And there are shelters that will take animal incorrigibles. There's a place called the Blue Star Animal Preserve down by Bloomfield that takes dogs that nobody else wants and some people want put down. And they will keep the dog there, some of them for life, because nobody wants them, but they don't think they should be put down, and they're secure. So, and there are other places. There's a place down across the river by Fort Madison. I'm trying to think somewhere up in northeast Iowa, there's another place where you can send animals that really are kind of hopeless cases. If the owner just can't bring themselves to putting the dog down as a remedy. There's also a remedy of giving the dog to science at one of the universities. That's not real popular either. But there are some things that are in our code that are right out of the state code too, as far as things that are humane disposal. or, you still care about the animal, but the animal just can't be out with exposure to the things that are risks. So,
Thanks, John. I'm sure my wife is checking into that right now. She's probably looking up on the internet.
Great.
She's
Well,
going to take me there.
so we're coming up on an hour, and if you think of more questions, send me an email, leave me a message, or any of these people. I'm sure they don't mind if you leave them a message, and we'll try to get back to you with the appropriate answer. And we're going to, like Gordon said, let's keep our attention on this, and thanks for some ideas. That gives us some things where we can keep some attention on it in our community, and I hope that we have a safe summer with dog owners and going forward. And I do think we are seeing more chickens, maybe rabbits in people's backyards.
Chickens,
So,
definitely.
Definitely chickens. And we'll probably see more, particularly with the price of food going up. So we need to keep the dogs safe as well. And so appreciate everybody who was on this, appreciate those who came today to listen and share their stories. Appreciate Gordon's attention on this, because he's the one that's really kept it front and center for me. And I really appreciated the fact that last fall when he had a situation, we just went and talked to the dog owner. And the dog owner was so nice and accepting, and it was a tough decision for her to put that dog down. But again, she was a responsible dog owner, and it, was the right thing to do, I think. So, thanks, Chief. Thanks, John, for coming as well. Again, appreciate everybody who participated, and thanks, Jason, for making it happen live.